Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. For Kia Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee and a terrific service department that backs it up for the life of the vehicle. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Fired up by Chuck. Bryce Harper homers for the Phillies.
Things like there. That one is swung on and hit deep to right field off the auxiliary scoreboard. A solo home run. He ties the game at 1. His 14th homer of the year. It's his 8th straight game with an RBI.
Tommy McCarthy with the call. As the Phillies, by the way, are in a 2-2 game right now with the Angels at the ballpark. We'd give you, like, the Yankee preview, but it's a meaningless game. All right, so, yeah. Whew.
100%.
Your team. Basically, what your team is doing is they're wrecking it for every player in Major League Baseball. You want to know how?
How's that?
Well, they were encouraged to spend money. They did, and they're in last place. The teams that didn't spend a lot of money are all in first place.
Yeah, that's very interesting. No question about that.
Right? Yeah, who wrecked it for you? Well, essentially the Yankees. All right, yeah, that's your team wrecking the game. They went from 64 to 76 without making the World Series. From so 65 to 75, they didn't make the World Series. Okay, we're now going up to year 14. Not going to make it again. All right, Neal Coolong joins us. Sir, welcome. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine as usual. I enjoy a baseball season in which the Yankees aren't relevant. That's just me. Not everyone feels that way, but a lot of people do, let's be honest.
The vast majority of America does agree with you. Matt thinks everybody's a Yankee fan, and no. You know a lot about Trey Lance because of the North Dakota State connection. It has been a struggle on this level, and part of it has been injuries, and now he's with the Cowboys. As somebody who followed his career at North Dakota State and understands what his physical quarterback tools happen to be, are you surprised it's been an issue for him?
We'll say this. I mean, you can't argue with the black and white. I think, 3 other players in the modern era, 3 other quarterbacks in the modern era have been drafted in the top 5 and not made more than 30 starts in the NFL after 3 seasons to be released by their drafting team. It doesn't look good, but we knew Lance was coming into a very unique situation at the lower tier level and inexperienced. I mean, there are not too many guys, I don't think anyway, that have been drafted like Trey Lance. For him to go into the system that he did, a highly advanced, very quarterback-heavy structure, passing offense, physically he was tailor-made for it. We weren't sure how quickly he was going to be able to adjust to everything. NDSU did some pro stuff. They ran a kind of an older pro-style offense, so it's not as if he wasn't going to be able to operate from out of center. It's not that he couldn't read a defense and make a multi-tiered decision on throws. More of the issue is, I've said this often in this segment, like Mike Tomlin once said, it's not that he's raw, it's that he's inexperienced. The fact that Trey Lance had the bulk or all of 2 of his seasons to date cut short due to injury was the absolute worst-case scenario for him. So if we are looking at this as a failure of Trey Lance or a mistake on the 49ers' part, I think it's only reasonable to evaluate the fact that he had barely any time. You know, in many ways, he's kind of still a rookie. He was behind the 8 ball in experience anyway. He was brought in not to start immediately. They were going to bring him along, but he couldn't practice. So it's up to the player in many ways to get better, and I get that, but you can't simulate 11 on 11 with Nick Bosa off your wing, making throws down the field to George Kittle. You're not able to simulate that on your own with your passing coach. I don't think his career is over. I understand where the 49ers are coming from. They need to keep – they're a Super Bowl contending team. They need to put their best foot out there, and the fact is the starting job was won by the outlier of outliers, you know, the opposite of Trey Lance in many ways. Brock Purdy in, 2 training camps now has gotten the full complement of reps. He got more than Trey Lance has to this point. Purdy has more starting experience than Trey Lance does. They have a better body of work from which to evaluate him, and that's the ultimate irony of the whole thing. Lance has been there longer. He was a much more coveted pick. They traded away a lot in order to get him, and they probably don't have a great sense of who he is. I think it just became a numbers game, and really what it says is Purdy is going to be our guy. That's the decision that they're making. I can see why they would do that. I don't know if Dallas is the best place for him for a variety of reasons, one of which being a quarterback's coach, head coach combination that hasn't really produced a whole lot recently when he didn't inherit a situation. I don't think it's over for Trey Lance. I do think, though, he's going to get caught in the wash, and he really needs to find a place in which he can compete for snaps and he can put the work in with a full unit and get constant physical as well as mental coaching on how to play the position. I don't think he's had the combination of those things beyond his rookie season, which now was a while ago. So I get where it's coming from. I'm not going to call him a bust. He got hurt. I mean, you can't really ignore that part of it. People want to. They want blood. They want to dunk on him. I don't think that's fair, to be honest. I understand that I'm kind of biased in the situation, but I would say this about anybody. He didn't practice. He didn't have the opportunity to get out there and really grow and develop, which he needed to. This wasn't a Power 5 4-year starter. He's the opposite of that. So what he really needed, he didn't get. So I don't know if we really know who he is as a player yet, or if we'll even find that out.
I'm trying to think if we talked about the college experience factor. I think we might have, right? Because Purdy was a 4-year starter, and Lance had a year and a game. And look, and you can be a short-time starter, go to the NFL and be fine. But I think I've noticed over time the guys that were longer-term starters, at least 2 years, especially at a high level, seem to perform better at the pro level. Am I missing anything on that?
I think it's a fair statement overall. Without the numbers being in front of me, it really kind of depends on how you want to define each level of success within that. But the reality is, when you have a full body of work like you do with Brock Purdy, you know exactly what you're getting. And what's unique about him, and Connor Orr, Sports Illustrated, highlighted this leading into the draft, after the draft, after Purdy had the success that he had at the pro level. They knew who he was as far as a college player, and with that, you can come up with a reasonable, though subjective, opinion as to what his ceiling is going to be. Purdy took it upon himself in the offseason to improve. And the reality is, when you watch him, even in preseason games, versus him in college when he was at Iowa State, he's a considerably better player. Yes. So, credit that's not normal either, but we're also living in the era in which Josh Allen became 400% better in one offseason. These things can happen. They're not normal. You don't want to bank on it. But Purdy, he improved himself tremendously from where he was. And you have to think the basis of that is experience. Because let's be honest, Brock Purdy is not the best athlete you're ever going to see. He's not terrible, but he's not a very good athlete.
Right.
He knew enough about the position to take to the coaching they were giving him. In other words, he's starting at the 400 level class, not the 100 level class like Trey Lance is. Trey Lance is 10 times the athlete, has a much better arm, a better build, the intangible, coachless things. You want to build up from that, and that's not unusual at all for the pro level. But when you have a college quarterback who's been through the ringer on everything, mentally he's dealt with it all. Emotionally, he's gone through the peaks and valleys of everything. Physically, his body is a lot stronger. 5 years in a college, nutrition and lifting program is going to benefit a guy athletically. You know that. The question usually is, it's not where he is now, it's where he's going to be. And that's why guys like Brock Purdy are not particularly valuable, because they're seen as having hit their ceiling. But Purdy he's improving at a level that you kind of expect from a much younger quarterback when he gets the reps. So it's almost like he's a combination of both. My opinion, and I'm a big fan of Kyle Shanahan. I really enjoy watching his teams, the way that they conduct themselves, the way that he calls a game. I think he's brilliant. But you have to give the credit to Purdy, just simply because players don't take it upon themselves to improve that much from the position that he was at. And good for him for doing it. That's remarkable to see. But he absolutely is not your normal 23, 24-year-old quarterback. They would have had to have had a much higher level of collegiate success for a team to want to take even the Mr. Irrelevant pick chance on him. So maybe that's going to come back into vogue here. When you look at the situation following Trey Lance, which, again, I'm not going to say he's a bust, but
right.
The worst possible thing that could have happened to him happened to him. And the team gave up a ton for him. Zach Wilson never looked comfortable as a pro. Incidentally, neither did Sam Darnold, in my opinion. Another player that came out early that was highly touted for the physical traits. It makes you wonder. You look at what Bill Belichick is doing in New England right now. He's making his best effort to drive the price down on the quarterback market. He's got 2 backups on the practice squad and 1 starter on the active roster. Experience has to count for something, and perhaps coaches are saying we can do better with the quarterbacks because, frankly, we're not going to get Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen is a fluke scenario. Nothing against Josh Allen, but you're not finding that guy every day. That's a completely unusual situation and circumstance. At some point, you're going to have to develop a player to do well. And this is funny because I don't want to act as if Kirk Cousins is on the level of Patrick Mahomes, but what? He wasn't Marcus Mariota either. If we want to look at the structure of that show, look at what Cousins has done. He's just simply improved. He had a body of work. He wasn't, a premium prospect. He was drafted literally to be a backup quarterback, and he's going to end up being one of the 5 highest-paid players ever to play the game by the time he retires. There's something to be said about internal improvement, and when you get a player that you feel can develop along those lines, maybe it's better off doing that instead of constantly throwing darts at the board trying to get the physical freak to turn into a higher level player than what they probably are.
The Steelers appear to be better positioned today than they were a year ago. Is it just because of Kenny Pickett, or is it more to it than that?
It's a great question. I was talking about this with people before. I think there's a difference between the team improvement as well as the fan perception of it. The fan perception of it, my take, is probably fueled more in we have a quarterback that actually showed us, he gave us reasons to believe that he can be a good player. I don't, to put it mildly, think that was the case this time last year. You've got, along with that, though, you have, I'll say it now, to go to the 10,000-foot level, I think it's pretty clear that Omar Khan is the front runner for Executive of the Year. The way the Steelers look, The moves that he made were so precise, and they fit so well with what they were trying to do, what they have been trying to do. You can't do anything but kind of stand back and applaud. And that's not to say they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I've stressed this since day one. Isaac Seumalo couldn't be a better fit for what the Steelers are trying to do. He's going to be a Pro Bowler. Whether or not he's the best guard in the game is irrelevant. He is going to execute so well for what they do. It's impossible to not link his success with the team's success in whatever area that is. They added depth along our offensive line, which has been a problem. He just got draft picks for two guys that reasonably could have been cut. You know, that's a power move to be able to do that.
Yeah.
They were the team that had to acquire guys like at the level, not them literally, but at the level of Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green. They had to plug those guys in. They don't have to do that anymore. It feels like panic moves aren't being made. It feels like they are taking strong steps forward now. Pickett is a part of that, and Pickett is probably the ringleader of that, but he's not the only part of it. You know, locking up Alex Highsmith long term, I don't think is something that everybody expected to happen necessarily, but he's a very, very solid player for what they're doing. Quan Alexander is a late acquisition, and from what we saw at least in preseason, guy can still move. I mean, he's athletic. Maybe it is just an injury thing. For them to have been able to bring him in, put it this way, last year he was Miles Jack, and they paid Miles Jack 5 times as much. And Alexander looks twice as fast as Jack has, who just retired, by the way. Hats off to him. I always loved Miles Jack. He was a great player, but he was done. I mean, you could tell he's not the same guy. Every move that they've made kind of seems to compound a reasonable level of optimism of what they've built this entire offseason. So, to me, I think there is way more to be said about the entire roster, but, Joe Sweatsock, Steelers fan, is absolutely going to view Kenny Pickett as the embodiment of all of that. And that's fair, too. You know, we saw a lot of good things from Pickett. I don't tend to like to have to, hyper-analyze results in the preseason. But more than anything, what we saw, it's almost like you could hear the game plan going through Kenny Pickett. This is the preseason. Cut it loose. See what you can do. He reared back and chucked a couple of those balls that he absolutely would not have taken last year for what we saw. And he hit them right on the money. And guys made plays after the catch. We didn't see any of that last season. It seems like there's a level of confidence and swagger that's coming out of one of the more dismal offenses, certainly over the first half of last season. It's hard not to take notice of that and pin it on a quarterback that has guts, that people want to follow. He's going to get in there and go after his opponent. I don't think we've really seen that the last couple of years in Pittsburgh. It's refreshing, and I think they're again, I don't want to look at the results, but the success that they had in the preseason, to me, really came from a sense of confidence, probably more than anything else, and that's going to bode very well for them early on this season.
When you look at the division, it seems on paper balanced. Do you look at that as a balanced division? I'm not going to say the Super Bowl champion comes out of that division. I'm not. But how balanced is the division?
I think it's competitive.
Yeah.
Baltimore's never a bad team without, wheels falling off, which happens to everybody at some point or other. Cincinnati's obviously a good team, though I would argue they've been a much better January team than September through December to this point. They're beatable is really what I'm saying in the regular season. They're not the juggernaut that Kansas City has been. Those three teams are very close to each other. And while I'm done making predictions about positive things for the Cleveland Browns, at some point they really should be able to make more hay out of the lineup that they have than they have been. I don't necessarily think they're quite the pushover that we saw them turn into over the last, 4 or 5 games last season. They can and should compete just on the talent that they have alone. It's not I don't expect them to draft in the top 5 this year. in the future. Who knows? They're the Browns. But between Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore, I think you've got 3 good football teams that are going to give each other fits. And I think with that, their records are going to be down because they're going to, beat each other up quite a bit over the 6 games that they're going to share between those teams. And with it, it's going to be a very tight race down the end. I think 10 wins can win that division. I don't know if they get to 11, but I don't think anybody in the playoffs is really going to want to play any of those 3 teams, home or away. I think all 3 of them have the capability of, throwing punches with whoever the best in the AFC is going to end up being. So in that sense, I think it's balanced. I don't know if the Browns are going to be there just because they give you so many reasons to not believe them. But 3 out of 4 is a pretty strong division. I think all 3 of them playoff teams. And they'll do battles against each other. I think you're going to get a lot of good football coming out of that division this year.
My friend, always a pleasure. Thanks for the adjustment. Appreciate that. Allowed Mr. Ham and I to be in Pittsburgh yesterday. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Pleasure is all mine as always. Thanks for having me.
Neal Coolong, Kathryn Tappen in the next half hour. Matt doing a slow boil today. It's always like bubbling near the surface, then it just, boom, all of a sudden out of nowhere. It's like watching macaroni boil over.
That's very accurate, actually.
That's, yeah, your name came up today. And it was, I said, you're very emotional. Yes.
I see.
Yes. I said he gets very. Said when his team is playing, he's a wreck. Could see like the Eagles being a heavy favorite, and not get into a game in the fourth quarter where it's not supposed to be that close. And you just, I don't think you can handle it.
A la the Chicago game last year.
I don't even remember the Chicago game last year, so. Yeah. They won, right? Wasn't that one where they scored late and won or something?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. That was at Soldier Field?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And the NFL schedule's now 212 games for each team, so some of them do get lost in the wash. We'll come back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Attention, Central Pennsylvania truck buyers. This is the one event you've been waiting for. Sunbury Motors is having their 75th annual August New Ford Truck Sale with savings up to $8,465 and financing as low as 1.9%. All new Ford F-150s will be priced at just $75 over invoice, and they will come with a genuine Ford bedliner. Ford Motor Company has awarded SMC 42 additional F-150s to meet consumer demand during this unprecedented sale. The Ford F-150 is America's #1 selling truck for 46 consecutive years, and one is sold every 49 seconds. Sunbury Motors has 23 new Ford Explorers available with savings up to $5,000, and they start from just $43,375. Pick from 17 of the totally redesigned Ford Escapes, and SMC has them slashed $2,500, and they start from only $30,890. Sunbury Motors in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury, proudly owned by the Mertz family for over a century. Hurry before someone gets your new truck.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Let's get Brian in Virginia in. Hi, Brian. How are you? Thanks a lot for waiting.
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for taking my call. Love the show as always. Getting very excited for the upcoming Penn State football season. Looking forward to hearing you on Saturday, but I'll be there at Beaver Stadium. Maybe I'll get a chance to see you Saturday. But I was just calling because I just wanted to make you aware, I think you're missing out on some opportunities. I think you could have a thriving merchandise business off your show. You could have some things from like that Matt says, like I don't tolerate stupid on bumper stickers, T-shirts, things like that. I also think it would be cool if on your website you could have a virtual Hall of Stinkage where Matt could put each person he's inducted on there and explain his rant or something as to why they got inducted. That would be pretty cool.
Brian, you are on to something. You are definitely on to something.
I love the last part, the part about merchandise. Then we have to put his face on there, and there's all sorts of problems there.
But I would drive around with the bumper sticker that says I don't tolerate stupid. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I also love what you say, Steve. Like, but he thinks highly of you. I always laugh. That's what's great. Anyway, I just wanted to give you some food for thought.
I love the website thing. I think we should start constructing that as soon as possible because I think that is actually an awesome idea. I'm glad you thought of it, Brian, because I never thought of that. And I think it would, and the fact that he would list reasons why. Now, sure, it opens it up to lawsuits, but don't let that bother you, Brian. All right, so
it's his editorial opinion. But the other thing is, maybe you could have some of those guests on to explain why they should get out of the Hall of Stinkage. I don't know.
Now, Brian, hold on a second. Okay, on the last part, Matt would have to interview them. There's certain things that I don't want to be linked to. Hey, you put me in your Hall of Stinkage. I did nothing. I'm just hosting the show. Come on.
You would just be there describing the train wreck to the rest of us.
I would be sitting here. I would let Matt interview them, and it would be the equivalent of watching Harrison Ford jump from the bus as the train went by.
Get the lingerie on the deck. Call the janitor.
Well, look, I love you guys. Love this show. Keep it up. Thanks for letting me spot out my ideas, and have a great season. Go Lions.
But Brian, I want to tell you right now, the listing on the website is a great idea. I love it.
Good.
Okay?
Good deal.
I do.
But
me then interviewing them based on his carnage? No. You have to take responsibility for your own opinions.
There you go. Well, thank you all. Have a great season, Steve. Go to Lions.
Thanks, Brian. Stop by, say hi to us, please. See, they love your Hall of Stinkage.
I like the bumper sticker idea. That's pretty good.
Okay. Now, I would like to point out, though, do you even know how many people are in your Hall of Stinkage? Because I don't.
Oh, geez, I've lost track by now.
You should start compiling a list. And because I think Brian is onto something here.
Yes, I agree.
Brian is onto something here where you can then list individuals in your Hall of Stinkage. This is after you put down obviously this is after the entire Yankees roster, so like we've already got 42 guys on there. I know you don't want to put Judge on, but the vast majority of the season is a no-show. So, but yeah. I mean, you have no idea how many are on there. See, this is where Brian needs, Brian is correct, and Brian now has put out the need for you to start thinking who is actually in and out, who was on the verge of it, but who isn't quite there yet.
Right. Yeah.
See, Brian is on to something.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, and again, I'd like to, to the attorneys out there when they do see the names, again, it's CATRI. No, what? I didn't put you on there. Don't look at me. He said, and Steve, you can have him on the show. You want me to interview Brian? I didn't put him there.
No, senor! No, senor! No, senor!
Oh, goodness gracious. Is Pat Narduzzi in your hall?
He is one that is on the verge, let me tell you.
On the verge?
Yes. Absolutely on the verge.
What would put him over the top?
One more comment about Penn State being scared to play Pitt and or the Panthers don't back up their claims this year. If they don't walk the walk and talk the talk.
I don't even know what their claims are. To be honest with you, I couldn't tell you in a million years what his claims happen to be.
Basically, if they don't play well this season, after all this talk of saying Penn State is scared to play them, then we'll throw them in. And or if there's another comment out there.
Jeez, in the world of 1-0, I really don't. I couldn't even tell you what their non-conference schedule is this year. I have no idea. I don't really pay any attention to them. And it's not because of like any reason other than that Penn State doesn't play them, so why should I pay attention to them? I mean, they're not really a factor in the national championship race. They're not on Penn State's schedule. They're not playing anybody. I don't think that affects where Penn State is or isn't. So which is the same, I would say, for anybody else. I mean, in other words, I would say the same thing about Georgia Tech. I'd say the same thing about Oklahoma State, so forth. No difference. All right, Kathryn Tappen next. She's going through a series of meetings today with the teams getting ready for NBC's debut of Big Ten football on Saturday night. We'll talk with her in a moment, including a question. I asked my class today, I said, give me a question you would like me to ask her, because I have several in my class that would like to eventually, down the road in life, do her job.
There we go.
All right, so I'm going to ask that question to them as a courtesy to my class and bring it back to them next Wednesday when I see them. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. All right, great to have you back on the show today. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Big Ten Saturday night on NBC. It is not only the season opener for the Nittany Lions when they take on West Virginia, but it's also the debut of Big Ten Saturday night for NBC Sports in a long-term contract. And on the call with Todd Blackledge and Noah Eagle, one of the best in the business, and that is Kathryn Tappen, who will be working the sidelines. Kathryn, thanks a lot for your time today.
Oh, my gosh, Steve, thank you. We are so excited for this weekend. I love just the sound of that Big Ten Saturday night. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does. And you've done a lot in your career. I mean, if we were to sit here and list all the accolades, it would eat up the rest of the show and you wouldn't have to speak. But between the Olympics and the NFL, the NHL, Notre Dame football, what did it mean to you personally to be put on this assignment for Big Ten football with Noah and with Todd?
Yeah, well, I mean, it means a lot to me. First of all, I mean, I've had the opportunity to do such great things at NBC Sports and NHL Network and Nesson and local NBC 10 in Providence, Rhode Island over the course of my career. And when it started trickling out the news that, hey, this package might be going to NBC in some capacity, I mean, I immediately went to my immediate bosses and the higher-ups and the people that make these decisions and, basically said, however possible, to be involved in this broadcast, I'd love it, whether I'm hosting or doing sidelines. It meant a huge deal to me. I absolutely love college football. I've enjoyed going to college football games my entire life. My uncle's a Hall of Famer at Rutgers.
Yep.
I went to Rutgers. My grandfather graduated from Penn State, and I just, and then covering Notre Dame football for the last 9 seasons. There's nothing like it to me. The traditions, the sounds, the families gather for the tailgates, just the pure joy that it brings fans, and people have a vested interest in these schools because most of those fans went there or they live in the area and they know the players and they see the players around town and, the band, and it's just incredible. And I'm so honored to be a part of it. And then you factor in, my goodness, they go out and get Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. I mean, I'm surprised I'm part of that trio because those guys are the best there are. And I'm just so excited. It's been an honor to get to spend time with them. Todd and I spent a great deal of time together out in the Midwest back in March. Noah was still doing his responsibilities with the Clippers, but, went to a couple teams out there in the Big Ten and visited with Wisconsin and Minnesota and a couple of the others. And then, Noah, I had to spend a great deal of time with him at the Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis. And, we all just hit it off, and that's going to come across on the air. I mean, yeah. I've always said in my career, you've got to spend a lot of time, and it works for players too, off the field, quote unquote.
Yep.
And I've I've loved getting to know my colleagues. We become a family. You're on the road together 24/7. You're eating meals together. You spend more time than your real family. And I'm looking forward to seeing that chemistry grow and hearing it on the broadcast as well.
Yeah, on the radio side, that's what Jack Ham and I do with our group every week. Or in basketball, Dick Girardi, we make sure we're always on the road together, developing that relationship all the time. It's really important. So I do teach a broadcasting class, sports broadcasting class at Penn State. I did tell them you were going to be on the show today. And I'd say maybe a third of the students in the class say they would love to be a sideline reporter. So I asked them, if you had an opportunity to talk with Kathryn, what question would you ask? So I'll give you the two-part version. You can handle it any way you want. Number one, what does it take for you to then go into something new with new teams, to then develop relationships, and then how important down the road are those relationships to giving better stories and better reports?
Well, I think I'll answer the second part first because, in general, I think every single relationship you make from the second you start deciding what you want to do with your life, whether it's broadcasting or a bank or a lawyer, a veterinarian, whatever it may be, those early relationships, you'd be amazed at how, and you know this, you come, 10, 15 years into your career, you have to circle back with someone you may have met in your first couple of years. And I have always had great relationships. I am really vested in the network. I think everybody should have their network, and they should have their network of people that they can reach out to at any point in time. Because to your point, especially with college sports and pro sports, I mean, people move teams all the time. You may develop a relationship with the PR staff at Penn State, and maybe one of those people goes on to NFL teams, and next thing you know, you're covering that NFL team, and you've got to talk to the PR staff again, and hey, remember those days we covered Penn State? Those kind of things. So the relationships are incredibly important because every single one of them is going to come back at some point in your career or personally. And then with regards to taking on something new, I mean, it's a huge just this week alone, the prep, I was on vacation last week at my family's summer cottage in Maine, and I started to get really antsy come like Thursday, Friday, and I was going to leave on Sunday, and I told my mom, I'm like, no, I'm out of here. Like, I got to get back. It was like the first day of school, jitters and anxiety, because these are two unknowns. Typically with Notre Dame, it was a little different for me. We always, by week 5, the Notre Dame team inside and out. You just really had to study the opponent. This is a matter of studying and really ingraining yourself in both teams. And again, a lot of that work started in March. A lot of that work continued at the Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis. And it's just constantly inundating yourself with information. We have an amazing team at NBC Sports of researchers. And, we were getting press clippings on a weekly basis for all Big Ten teams. We got our research pack for this game starting on Sunday, and it's all the facts, it's all the important stats you need to know, and at the end of the day, the game tells itself. You could have all the history and all the storylines in the world, but unless there's a 7-hour lightning delay, you might not get any of them in. So, but we are looking forward. We've had a great reception from all the head coaches. I sat down every head coach in Indianapolis, the Big Ten, for about a 12, 15-minute interview, and they were all wonderful. And I think, that facial recognition will come into play on the sidelines on Saturday and as we move forward in the season, and just the credibility we all have, and that Peacock, that brand it stands for itself, and it's got a lot of class behind it. It has a lot of integrity, a lot of respect, and we will continue to function as our parent company does as well, and just be the best we can be.
Have you thought, or has anybody talked to you at all about being on the sideline at Penn State? It's not a whiteout on Saturday night, but it's as close to one as you're going to get because it'll just be the blue stripe.
Yeah, the helmet stripe.
Has anybody talked to you about that and the noise factor down there?
Yes, actually, I talked to a couple of the players today. I caught up with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, and I'll be speaking to a few more of them tonight. Yes, they have all described what it's like to run onto that field. I certainly remember, and I've seen the images and the replays of the helmet stripe game last year against Michigan. I don't know what it's like to be down there, though. I mean, I'm excited. I mean, I've been a part of huge events in my career. I've got dual earpieces that are noise canceling, and they are. You might be standing right next to me, Steve, and you actually have to like physically tap me because I've got those things so loud so I can hear the broadcast of my producer. But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I have not broadcasted a college football game in that kind of environment, so there will be. I mean, that's part of the game, though. That's part of what my responsibility is too. How are the opposing players figuring out how to communicate with one another when it's so loud? So I think it's going to be awesome. And then you factor in under the lights in a primetime game, it's going to be off the charts.
Without giving away too much, is there a story on Penn State that you can tease a bit that you're anxious to tell when you get the opportunity?
Well, I'm really anxious to tell the story about these running backs. I mean, I think it's incredible what they've done. We look at different universities in the course of college football and colleges, and there's tight end U. There's the schools that have strong offensive lines, and it's really neat that these guys are a well-oiled machine in their running backs. And I think that chatting with them, I'll catch up with Saquon Barkley this week and get his perspective on these guys on the field. And that's one of the storylines I'm interested in. And I found it interesting because I asked both guys, hey, was there any trepidation coming to Penn State knowing the other guys coming? Sometimes, especially you look at college football now and all the movement, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to be a starter, I'm going to transfer, which I don't necessarily always agree with, but I understand their circumstances both ways. But neither one of these guys thought that. They were like, oh, no, are you kidding? Like, I was excited. And they live together. They work with each other off the field. They're buddies off the field. And I just think those are the stories that I love to tell because it's part X's and O's, but it's part about what makes these guys human and what makes them college student athletes first and foremost before they are anything else. And the families are close. And I just think that's one of the stories I'm looking forward to telling, and then we'll see what else we get here as we talk to some of the coaches and go to practice this week.
Yeah, because I mean you'll notice when you're there, because I'm there every day, is that Allen and Singleton are side by side all the time, not because it's positional, just because they like being around each other. And The interesting part is their number of carries, and I said this to Nick today at the quarterback club. He and Allen were separated by 11 carries organically last year. It really played out well. Wow,
that's awesome. Yeah, I asked him if there's any friendly competition with how many scores each one has. He said Allen actually said to me, there's definitely a little. If he scores a touchdown, I got to get one too. So not a bad problem to have if you're James Franklin and company, right?
Yeah, no, he's always promoting competition. That's a good one to have. He scored, I better get one. That seems to help the team in the end. Yeah. Is there anything quickly on West Virginia story you'd like to tell?
Well, I think they're feisty. I mean, listen. Their coach. There's no question that the coach is in the hot seat right now, and they didn't have the season they wanted to last year. Their defense was not good last year, and so they're coming into this game fired up and ready to go and trying to prove who they are. They've got the great All-American center in Zach Frazier. They spoke to one player today who said he's the general of the offense. Garrett Green is the sergeant. He's the general, and so I think. They've got an incredible offensive line. The defense, I think, is going to come out trying to prove themselves, which is going to be tough against Penn State, arguably one of the best offenses in the country, and certainly offensive lines. And, I think that they've got something to prove this season. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. So I think that will be the storyline for West Virginia coming in.
This is the consummate pros pro, and Kathryn Tappen's going to add a lot to the Big Ten coverage as she continues through. Thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate that so much, Steve. I'm going to hit you up on those sidelines and get some info from you. So
sounds great. Thanks. I appreciate it, Kathryn.
I know. We're looking forward to being there. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you. Kathryn Tappen, outstanding at NBC. She really is one of the best, without question. And don't forget, next week, it's not, it'll be NBC Peacock on Saturday night, and then Peacock only next week for the game with Delaware. Good news. Bumper stickers are now coming out for Matt.
I really do like this idea.
It says, I don't break for stupid. What does that mean? I mean, what does that mean? You worry me. That's not the direction I was hoping to go in. I'm under the category of keep America safe. Hey, Sean Hannity is coming up in just a few minutes after the news here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.